we've got a bunch of kind of conversation starters, shall we say. And what I'd really love to do is I would really love to start a conversation. Please feel free to kind of raise your hand if you want to say something. Please feel free just to take your mute off and join in. Don't worry about kind of any etiquette in that respect. And I just kind of wanted to start with something that's very close to our heart at the moment, something that we're sort of discussing amongst ourselves and amongst other groups that we're involved in. And I think that's kind of two combined projects. It's kind of the overarching well-being, how everyone is feeling and how we're all doing at the moment. And also the campaign at the moment that we're trying to start and we're trying to kind of forge ahead with, which is Reset Better, which the very lovely Mark Shale and Terry Lee Dixon are kind of leading on, along with David and Dan and various other members. I know Rachel's in that working group and there's other people that are in that working group. So I kind of just wanted to open up the floor to anyone who has anything they want to say about well-being at the moment, anything, any helpful hints, any guidance that they want to bring to the room, and Reset Better.
I think Shaylee needs to speak.
Oh, I knew you were going to do that. That's just deeply, deeply mean of you. There's me coming along as an ordinary member, and now you're spotlighting me.
You're the eminence grise. Shut up and get on with it.
So Reset Better, I have to say I feel like slightly Johnny come lately to the PMF working party on this, because a lot of colleagues, as Mandy's already name checked, and I see Rachel and Ali in here as well, have been putting in a lot of legwork to this, although actually in fairness, and I don't think it does any of us disservice to say, we are struggling with this because it's a big tiger to catch the tail of. And what does Reset Better look like? To me, I'm sort of boiling it down constantly to 5-day weeks, 2-session days, job sharing and flexibility, and basically being smarter when we return. Terry's put in some heavy lifting to documentation, which we're going to discuss at the working group tomorrow. I've put what I'm thinking is a little charter together, something that no one can say no to, something that screams motherhood and apple pie, that human-centric theatre and better working practices is a good thing, and that no one can complain about, to then try to at least get everyone to put their signature to "we will do better" collectively as an industry. And by that I'm thinking we're not just talking producers, although clearly they have a huge role to play, but it's about all our individual actions, particularly us as production managers. I'm particularly interested in directors because I feel that they very much set the tone. And as a director colleague said to me yesterday, her experience of working at the Globe, they have set out to try to put in a slightly kinder, not necessarily working 100% in some respects, but to maybe share some of that power that directors hold so that we can all take a level of responsibility for reclaiming dignity, respect, work-life balance, and all the good gravy stuff that we hopefully aspire to, our better angels aspire us to, especially having had this year of jumping off the carousel and thinking what would life look like when we go back to make it better. So that's kind of, I have to say, that's my slightly elongated elevator pitch that I've been saying quite a lot to a number of people over a number of months, in point of fact. But it is slippery. But the good thing is everybody's voice is as equal on this conversation, and the more voices we can bring into this conversation to create better work practices moving forward. And we're production managers. We should be at the forefront of this because we're writing these rubbish schedules quite often. We're probably the right people to be kicking this ball down the hill to gather some speed. Thank you very much. I welcome everyone's commentary.
Thank you, Mark. David?
Well, just before, the reason I was late was I was actually discussing this with the artistic director of the company I work for, National Theatre Wales. And they're going to consider this on Monday and whether we can actually apply this for the next year, which would be, it's quite hard to disagree with a lot of the things in there. And I have asked Terry to put his documents into the chat so that everybody can have a conversation, because, in the end, a working group is just a sort of a subset of everybody. And everybody's input is extremely welcome. But it was very encouraging to talk to an artistic director who went, yes, this is the sort of thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
I think, David, that's an excellent move, and well done to you. First good lad badge of the project goes to David Evans.
Thank you, Terry. That was staggeringly unexpected.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and if anybody does find these documents interesting, these ideas interesting, which I think Shaylee rather charmingly described as humanizing theatre, do share them with directors who in the end are the sort of the pinch point of so many of these undertakings and a lot of what we do.
Thank you.
And Mandy, if I may, I can just see Fee has dropped into the chat her document that she did last year from the Freelance Task Force, which Fee, I don't know if you're able to talk, but Fee very kindly sent this to me a while ago, and I have to say it certainly helped me in my thinking on this. And I've just dropped in my first run at a draft, which I was going to talk to our working group tomorrow, what I'm calling a Reset Better Charter, which again, very much welcome everyone's feedback on. Terry kind of tasked me with this earlier today, so it's a bit of a here's a canter at it. Does this make sense as a kind of no one can say no to this kind of notion? So again, have a look, see what you think.
I would like to correct Mr. Shale. He was a volunteer, not a pressed man.
I volunteered in that way that everyone else took a step backwards.
Thank you very much, chaps. That's great. Can I hand that over to Fee then and bring you into the conversation, please?
Hello there. Yeah, sorry I couldn't turn my camera on until now. So yes, as Mark said, this is something I worked on last year as part of the Freelance Task Force that Fuel pulled together. So it's very Scottish based because that's where I'm based, but certainly it's a sort of starting conversation, or I see it very much as a starting document. I've since then been given some funding from Creative Scotland to continue these conversations and to actually pay some freelancers some time to basically talk to me, and then also to go almost into organizations and into a few companies to kind of work with them as to how we can implement some of these new working practices or restart practices or whatever they're being called going forward. So yeah, that's all really. But yes, have a look. Happy to have a chat about it with anyone. It's very much, as I said, a starting document, but it's there's no surprising reads in there, I'd say.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Fee. That's fantastic. And thank you for pointing that out, Mark. I'd just seen that come up on the chat, so I was just going to say that exact thing. I wonder if I could just pull in Ollie at this point, basically because I remember going to the last ABTT session we had. PMF ran a couple of kind of talks, and Ollie was charged at that talk with explaining his production schedules that he'd been trying to implement where he was with just two session days. And I kind of feel like that was 18 months ago, or even longer, was it?
Yeah, it was, well, nearly 2 years now, isn't it?
Yeah.
We haven't done many shows since then. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's not much, we made it quite clear that when we are, about going through 2 session days, my camera's just stopped. Let me change my camera. So yeah, we've been working on 2 session day text for a few years now, with the idea that we might still undertake some work on an evening session, where it would be like technical work and things where it means that you get time to fix things, because when you go into a tech, you're running at a rate of pace and you don't ever get a chance to actually fix anything, and then you come out at the end and they expect it all to be done for the dress that starts an hour later, and you just go, well, yeah, great. But what we found is actually we have not needed to add any time onto the schedules, really. Although we're losing the sessions which in tech are generally the most ineffective or inefficient moments, where people are exhausted. They've just had the stodge of whatever takeaway they've managed to find in the dinner break, and everyone's about ready just to go to sleep rather than actually get on and do any real effective work. So we've not really found that our tech session our tech period is really elongated at all. And what it has meant is we've had, there is a time when there is an opportunity to get things fixed, but also we generally don't, work past, 8 o'clock at night, really. Very rarely do we actually get up to past then. I think with the whole Restart Better, I think it's really great. I think evening, or more than 2 session days, I think it's great, but I would think that the thing that we really must nail to the mast is the 11-hour overnight break, because it's far too often treated as an option and not actually. This is a regulation that we really must keep to. And I know personally, so like since I've started working at where I am, by the way, for those who don't know me, I'm Ollie. I'm head of production and technical for Hull Truck Theatre. I'm also a PMF committee member. But one thing that I've been very adamant about is we don't break the 11-hour overnight break at all. We don't break the guidelines on breaks and make sure everyone has their breaks during the day, but also have that 11-hour overnight break. However, I need to be better at managing that myself.
I was just going to say that. Do you get to do that? Because I'm absolutely the same, cut from the same cloth. I make sure everyone else does everything. Everyone else has their breaks. But I'm the fool that's there at 7, and not leaving until 11:30 each night. So, how do we solve that ourselves?
I think personally, and I'm going to be honest here, I think that's because I personally can't let go. There are plenty of times where I personally break the 11-hour overnight break because I feel like I need to be in that room all the time at this point and that point and see this happen and that happen. When actually, do I need to be? Do you know what? When you've got a team around you and a team that you've built up and trust, and I know this is different for freelancers, I'm very, very aware. From a freelancer point of view, you're generally working with people you may never have worked with before, or you've not had built that kind of relationship of trust or whatever. But actually, there is a point where you need to. I know I need to let go a little bit more, to be honest. And I think I break it, but I am very, very, very strict on everyone else, as you say, about the 11-hour. They do not break it at all.
Thank you very much, Ollie. That's really appreciated. Rachel.
Just picking up on what Ollie was talking about just then, I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago now, and it might have been Emma from Royal Opera House. I'm not entirely sure, so I'm sorry if it wasn't her. I said something about this and about how leading from showing it as an example as a leader was really important for those breaks. And that's really stuck with me, actually, and that's really helped me try and curb that. In that, if I'm showing as an example that this is how we respect our break time, and it is about respecting those break times, it really helps peter it down, because I think there's a tendency, there's that martyr syndrome that happens in technical theatre, that people want to be, even if they want to be seen to be doing, giving their all and being passionate about the work, and for some reason that should translate as working more than you need to. Which I think it's a real mindset. It's really hard to shift away from. So that's something we also, in terms of setting these guidelines for Reset Better, part of it is setting guidelines that we stick to, but also there has to be a cultural shift at the same time in terms of how we as leaders of a group of people try and instill a change in how we think about our working life balance. I don't have an answer for how we'd go about that, but I think there has to be, the two things have to come together. The sort of like guidelines of what should happen, and then the cultural mindset about how you have a relationship with those guidelines.
That's a really excellent point. Thank you ever so much, Rachel, for that. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to add? David? You're on mute, my lovely.
I know I am. I know. I was wondering if we could ask our two representatives from America if they've had any thoughts on this, because there's been a lot of very articulate conversations about 10 into 12 or whatever it is. And I was wondering if there was anything that you guys might have to say. There you are, Patrick and Kari.
Yeah, I would say that these discussions are happening, but they are all centered around diversity and increasing BIPOC participation and making it more easier for people of color, younger career members of color, getting them into the profession and making it easier for them to stay there. So we're having these discussions and making life work better, but it's really centered and coming out of the diversity issue, which is, I think that those conversations are happening the same way on both sides of the Atlantic, but this specific conversation that you're having really is centered on diversity and diversification in the profession.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Carrie, anything?
Patrick's absolutely right. This came out of it started with a letter that was written, or an article that was written, We See White American Theater, which was a wake-up call in a lot of ways, but I think it also has afforded the rest of us an opportunity to really re-examine this. And I know in the theaters that I'm working over, we have in this, excuse me, I apologize. It's still early morning for me. We have instituted these practices. We've changed these things. I mean, we've eliminated what was called 10 out of 12, you would call a double session. We won't work a 12-hour span a day anymore. We keep the 12-hour rule. You have an 11-hour rule. We have a 12-hour rule overnight. And we've changed all of our rehearsals to be no more than 5 days a week. And we only perform Thursday through Sunday. So we don't, again, we're not crossing 5 days. And our 10 out of 12s are typically on a Saturday and a Sunday. And now we're doing Saturdays as 8 out of 10 and Sunday is 6 out of 8, meaning that our day spans 8 hours, but there's only 6 hours of rehearsal in there with a 2-hour break in between. So it's really helped us build a more humane practice, which I think is beneficial, not only for those young in their career, not only the BIPOC artists, but frankly, for us older folks that don't want to be there that late anymore. It's way better for me too.
Thank you ever so much, Carrie. That's really useful. What about some of the younger members in the room? Anything that Lucy wanted to add, or Dan, or I think James? I think you're one of our joiners from Guildhall. Is that right? Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here because the fact is that something that got instilled in me from a production manager years and years ago was that it's not surgery. We're not life-saving. At the time I was going through some personal problems and everything like that, and just needed to take some time off and everything like that. And he was just like, go home. You don't need to be here. Do this, do that, and it was something that instilled me quite quickly. That was just like, this isn't surgery or anything like that. This isn't life ending. And if you need to take that extra couple of hours to do something, then do it. In the end of the day, we have to look after ourselves. We have to look after our health. We have to look after our personal and home lives. And I think that's always kind of instilled in me very early on because I need to look after myself, because my mental health can die if I'm doing 60, 70 hours a week. And I need to make sure I'm looking after myself, because if you're not looking after yourself, how can you look after everybody else? And I think kind of when we're talking about these massive cultural changes, yes, they have to start with us. They have to start with us saying no. And it's hard. I completely understand that. As freelancers, it's terrible to kind of turn around and be like, I can't do that for an extra 15 or 20 quid, or I can't do this for an extra day or half day rate. You have to beat yourself, you have to beat yourself into submission to do all that. But we need that culture change in the industry, because without it, this is going to be a non-starter in some ways. But that starts from us at the grassroots and goes all the way up, in my opinion.
I remembered about 20 years ago, there was a production company in London called Wise Productions, and the guys that worked for Wise Productions, they did Natural History Museum and kind of event work and stuff like that. They had t-shirts that said Wise Guy on the back, and they had a little acronym on their shirt there, which basically was the initials for it's not fucking rocket science, and it just had the initials there, so the client never knew, but the guys that worked there knew that it's not anything that we should worry about, really. We're just putting something in a museum, or we're just doing something, and the client will scream and shout, but just remember that that's there on your chest, and that's coming from, you know, the boss, which I always thought was a really lovely touch. Sorry, Terry, you wanted to bring
just to pull up a couple of thoughts there. I'm hoping that Dan's been able to help me get the text of a draft form we have of a quote manifesto unquote, and might get that to you. Obviously, people who are involved already in the subcommittee that's dealing with this, the working group that's dealing with it, will have had that already by email from me. I think. Mark Shaley, were you going to try and put your charter notes up? I mean,
I have dropped it in, and
you're in the chat there, Terry.
If you scroll up there in the chat, you haven't seen it yet, because literally I hit the last full stop just before I logged into this Zoom meeting.
I don't have it in my copy of the chat, but that's probably because, as ever, I'm working on an iPad, because I'm too old and weedy to carry around the full weight of a MacBook. No, so that apart, what I wanted to I think underline is that we had in the last 20 minutes or so a lot of examples of organizations that are already following some of the guidelines, some of the charter points, some of the better ways of working, smarter ways of working that we've been discussing. And I noticed that almost exclusively these are grant-aided companies.
Yes.
And that's where I expected to find support for this Restart Better campaign. It's in the commercial area that we're going to have the biggest problem. That is one of the reasons why the notes that are maybe going to get to you soon in the quote manifesto unquote, I keep saying that because we haven't really decided on a name for it, or talking points. That's why we're trying to limit them to things that are cost neutral, so that one can go to a producer and say, look, pal, we think life should be like this. And guess what? It's not going to cost you any more. Also, to pick up on what was mentioned earlier, yes, there are a lot of provisions we would like to see actually followed, the ones that are already in existence, but like Ollie's point, 11-hour overnight. It's been in the contracts for decades, but it gets ignored. Infringements of breaks, having production meeting, in progress production meetings in a stolen hour and a half or an hour in the middle of a rehearsal day, so that there are inevitably going to be people in the team who will get no lunch. None of this is acceptable, and it's down to individuals, by the way, to actually make sure that you say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm taking my break now, or I'll take my break at a later stage. But we need to organize ourselves better, work smarter, work more efficiently. It's easier. I think that's all I have to say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Dan. Yeah.
Just to point out, because Mr. Evan has just pointed out to me, David's already put into the chat. So Terry's thing is a few days. So it's the one that David Evans posted is Terry's manifesto. The manifesto for Restart Better. So the smart restart 24th of the 2nd, 21.
Good. That's today's work. Excellent.
Just wanted to share something that's gone into the chat. So James has said, just want to say, as a production manager in training about to start on my first show, the information that is being shared is really interesting, and would like to see my shows are going to run in GSA. So just to feed in feedback on that point, what we've done as a committee at our last meeting, so PMF committee, is we were talking about ways to reach out, obviously of ways to kind of improve diversity in our industry, but also of opening up this sort of room from being, too focused on old white men. Apologies for the old white men in the room. So asking for different faces in the space. And one of the things that we're really interested in doing, you may have seen some social media posts that we've put out, is to bring in a committee member or an associate that is in training, so a production manager in training. So James, who's in the room at the moment, is in training at GSA, and we've got a member of our committee, David Ripley, who looks after the kind of training and education side, and he's in contact and has meetings with all training facilities across the entire UK from the production manager's point of view. And we're really trying to push that contact of being able to, for those students, those young people, to come into this room as town halls and to kind of talk and have a shared open dialogue, but also you know, just change the nature of the room. I wonder if I could ask or invite Lucy or Molly to say anything, to bring anything to the table.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Lucy. I'm, I suppose, likely someone that David has kind of recruited. He was pushing production management for. I'm a third year student at Central, and I am taking on. Well, I am doing some theatre soon, which is really exciting, and it's very exciting to hear about the talk about well-being. I'm already like establishing that relationship with a director of a show that's going to be realised very soon, and I thought we discussed quite quickly that the director sets the tone, and I'm quite interested in how like kind of explicit your conversations are about like the 11-hour rule, and having a 15-minute break for you, making sure the DSM gets a 15-minute break in sessions, and taking that hour lunch to like ensure the well-being of everyone, so in the cast, the crew, whatever, if they're going to set the tone. But like, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome, Lucy. Thank you so much. Molly, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Molly. I'm the general manager at Theatre 503 in Battersea. It's really great to hear you guys talking about all of these things. One of the things that comes to my mind is there's so much that venues can do which would take away a lot of these problems, in terms of potentially only giving over the space to companies within reasonable hours. So we've been having some chats with the Unicorn Theatre, and they've been starting to not do any evening sessions like you're talking about. And I just think there's a lot that organisations can do institutionally to prevent any of these issues arising. So it's all very exciting.
That's an excellent point. Thank you so much, Molly. Dan Gosling, I can see you've got your hand up. Welcome.
Hello. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to add in, because a lot of the things we've been saying are really great. From my experience, particularly of off West End stuff, where it is generally more scrappy, is that approach of you can start out with the best intentions, but it does inevitably end up that people stretch your expectations under pressure. And I think for me, the thing that I am trying to do, and the thing that I would like to see going forward out of this, is to be really clear about this with producers and production companies from the outset. And I think it's so important to get it in and to get in there and say, we will be working to this and you will agree to this from now. And I'm not gonna, and giving yourself that thing to fall back on of when you actually are in a situation where you've written a schedule that's all ticking those boxes, but you're actually trying to deliver it, and they need an extra session. There's absolutely no way this show can happen without an extra session. I think you need to find where there needs to be kind of a thing that you can fall back on and say, well, we agreed when this started, this is what we had, and this is the time that we had, and that's what your decision you've made. So now, and having kind of the confidence to say to them, well, now your decision is push back a preview or something else if you need that time. And so I think it's not only putting the thing in place early, but it's making sure you stick to it throughout the entire period, and that's consistent. And I think the real worry is, particularly in off West End, where maybe you're fighting with other people, that produces it annoys producers and production companies and reduces your opportunities to work to it. So it's as well giving them what is their incentive to doing this, other than the ethical reasons behind it, which obviously they should be playing into. So there isn't an answer there, because it's about how do we sell this to them so that they realize that it's a good idea too.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that point. I will come to you next, Hugh. I can see you've had your hand up for a little while. I just wanted to say that perhaps one of the things that is helpful is that we continue to have these discussions in these different forums, and then you won't feel as alone in those situations where you're having that conversation, that you can feel buoyed by the fact that your associations that that are there to help and assist you are also reaffirming those exact same things, and then you're commenting and relaying stories from Hull Truck, stories from NTW, stories from other colleagues who are working around the industry, and you can say this venue are doing this venue are doing this, and we stand united as one. But I totally agree with you, because I came up that way through the London Fringe, and everybody doing everything. Sort of cut my teeth at Pleasance in Edinburgh, where we just went until we died. Generally, we died in September. After sorry to jump in again, but the one thing to kind of add to that, it would almost be useful if some group somewhere almost created a gold badge or a standard or a tick box that was a thing that they could stamp on their productions for the producers and the production companies, that says this is following these rules, and that means there's no leeway on them. You follow those rules, you've agreed to do it, and I don't know that. That's like the sustainability Albert print that film have for this is how this production was made. I'm going to go to Hugh next, because he's had his hand up for a little while.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to pick up on what Dan was saying, and I completely agree, because my position, I'm resident at the Theatre Hall Plymouth. Okay, so that's a kind of a venue that receives, but also produces and co-produces. So it's got a kind of mixture of where we all are right now, as in getting excited about reopening at a point. And I think with regards to what we've been talking about right now, I absolutely am for this charter. I think it's an imperative kite mark that could become part of production management going forward, globally, nationally and internationally, because it also, without any descending order, it does include stage management, dressers, wardrobe, prop masters. We could go on, we know the outfits, okay? But I think what I'm curious about at the moment is, obviously we're getting excited that we can start to do things again. I think what's really key is getting this charter to a degree, to a position that can be presented, so it can be presented as a bargaining tool or point of concern with regards to venues getting excited, going, well, hey, let's get musical in, let's get bums on seats, let's get money through the door, but also understanding that many people are returning to work who haven't worked for a long time, whose well-being, as all of ours, is in varying degrees at varying different times of the day. But I'm just stressing what Dan was saying. I think it's a really, and thank you everyone who's shared their materials so far. I think it's really, really imperative to get this as a kite mark. It's a bit like the see it safely thing. Once that stamp exists, then there's a parameter, to use a word that we're all used to, that then can be stabled or put out as a stable, whether it's a commercial enterprise, a programmed theatre that just has receiving shows all the time, or in the freelance enterprise, or in co-production or production itself. It just means that then there is a go-to which members of production can actually hang on to and refer to, and then I would hope in time it becomes more of a kind of legal document to adhere to, because it's about protecting everybody's well-being. It's about efficient working practice, because you know, I'm sure all of us have got tales of doing ridiculous hours trying to push the thing through with, you know, a manic producer watching their money bleed away whilst the crew are lying on the floor dying, trying to get the thing together. But those days have gone, you know what I mean? And I think they should go, and I think they should firmly go, because it's just not good for anybody involved. And I think what the pandemic, if you like, has given an opportunity, a bit like the previous pandemic many, many years ago, or any global issue, it gives people an opportunity, a starting point to go, we can restart better. I'm sorry I'm going on a bit now, but I like what we're trying to achieve. But just to echo what Dan was saying, and as you put it, Mandy, it's about getting a kite mark, because then it's an easier thing to table in either a programming discussion, production discussion, or actually with a director that might be hanging on to existing old behaviours, which we're all trying to redefine.
I know that some of the people in the room will know this person I'm about to say very, very well. So one of my mentors early on in my career was Petrus, and whenever I think to myself why when we're working crazy hours and we're doing crazy things, I kind of think of him and kind of the people that are not here anymore, who died way too young in this career, and we can't overstate that, and we have a responsibility to Lucy, to Molly, to James, to Dan, to ensure that we do push this through, and that we don't have too many more wonderful people like Petrus passing away too early.
Can I just quickly jump in here? I'm going to jump in because we've got a comment on Facebook. I've just realised Ollie Keeper's just here as well. But he was saying his comment is, for me, I love this idea, but I fear the reality is a lot of people and companies will want to work all hours to pay off debts built up over the last 12 months, which I agree with. There's going to be people wanting to push this through, and it's going to be a scary point, because they're going to be wanting,
My answer to that would be, if not now, then when? Over to Mark.
You took exactly the phrase I was going to use, Mandy Ivory Castile. Yes, if not now, when? The gift of this great pause has been that this is the only time we will ever have to redefine what our industry is going to look like for the next X decades, for the next 50 years or longer, for the beginning of the 21st century. If not now, when? This is the golden opportunity, because we've had this time to go and take a breath. We've got off the merry-go-round and we've looked back and we've gone, bloody hell, that merry-go-round goes really, really damn fast. I like riding it, but I don't want to throw up anymore. And Mandy, it's so interesting you said about Petrus, because I've been thinking about Petrus all the time when I've been thinking about this stuff all the time. And so it's he's really at the forefront of my mind in thinking about, we lost too many good people, and we're not soldiers, and this isn't warfare, and it's not a battlefield. We do it because we love it. Why are so many of us burning out, dying, having mental health issues, having breakdowns? Why are we losing so many good, strong women in their 30s to have their children and they can't come back? This is fundamentally wrong. If not now, when? So, we have a duty as production managers to push this forward. I absolutely agree with what Dan and Hugh were saying, because to me, I think in my ideal world, sometime down the line, people will start talking about, are you working? Oh yeah, I'm working for a charter company, which is going to read, that's the kite mark. Oh really? You're working? That's brilliant. I'm working for Mrs. Mingle Productions, those exploiters. Really, I wouldn't touch them. I only work for charter companies now. That's the culture that I want to be working in, because yes, there will be companies, we know who they are, I'm not going to name them in a public forum, that just will not be able to adopt anything like this. But fundamentally what they're saying is they are putting profits over people. They are happy for people to die whilst they get another ivory-handled gold back scratcher. I'm not prepared to work for those companies, but unfortunately someone always will. But the push should be, the sea change should be, and we should be at the front of it, and we are, is that we are changing our culture. A drip at a time, but a drip at a time is how you build things. Just a little bit at a time, small steps, small steps. So I'm feeling really upbeat and positive about this. And then winding back ever so slightly, the conversations that we were having, and Ollie was saying about, we all kind of go the extra. We've all self-exploited. There's no greater exploiter than a self-exploiter. That's on us as individuals. We can change that now, because we have to model that practice now, or whenever we get back in the room. So for me, this is a historical inevitability. This pause has given us the opportunity to change. We will change, because there are younger people in the room, and they've got boundless energy that we used to go into working 24 hours around the clock. Now they're going to go, this is stupid. I want a long, sustainable career. That's where I'm going to put my energy. That's where I'm going to make a difference, and I'm going to help create great art. So if not now, when? And I'm delighted that PMF are leading on this, and I hope that we get this pretty much front and centre for APTL, because as soon as you've got every organisation at APTL, that's 200,000 people saying, we believe in this. The weight of our industry will be behind it, and actually so will a lot of producers, and so will a lot of directors, but there'll always be some that won't. That's fine. We're on the right side of this.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mark. May I invite the few people in the room who haven't yet joined in conversation? Is there anything that Ali, you wanted to add, or Geraint, you wanted to add, or Graham, David Ripley?
Just a thought, if I can throw something into the room.
Thanks, Ollie.
Obviously, I run a drafting business. I am commercial. I'm coming out of the, being very open and honest, I am coming out of this with debt, significant debt. I love the idea of this. My concern is, as a company with a lot of debt, obviously I agree with the principle that this is the right time to do it, but I think it's going to be really hard, and I'm going to have to sit down and really think with myself, how hard do I push myself to get out of the debt? Because I'm incurring interest on that debt. And freelancers will be in the same position. We've survived, or we're trying to survive, and some haven't had the option to walk away and get another job or career because you're locked in as a business. You have commercial rates and rents to pay, and just sharing my personal view. As I say, I love the idea. Just personally, I'd sign up to it, but I worry at the same time of I would probably want to take the extra job to clear the debt. And a lot of companies probably would too.
Thank you, Ollie. I think that's a really valuable point, and that's certainly something that we've heard on a number of occasions from freelancers, and it's something that we are committed to being sensitive to. Geraint, is there anything you wanted to add?
I suppose a lot of this now is sort of, I think we're all itching to put this theory into practice as well, aren't we, at the moment? And that'll be the sort of big test to it. I'm just wondering, for those like those that mentioned, Ollie, that I think you mentioned, obviously you've started already, Ollie Brown, that is, working 2 sessions, trying to cut that down. And David Evans, you mentioned, obviously you've had those conversations with the artistic director, hopefully to push this forward. What have you had to factor in additional financials to that? What have you, from a financial point of view, have you been asking those questions? Because obviously the big thing for us is, as a producing company, we don't necessarily have our own venue, so we do have to go into venues to tech, and normally you try and do that as a partnership, but normally the issue there is you've got a week to be up before you start, and that obviously, if we are looking to extend shorten the tech period or each tech time, possibly we need more tech time the previous week, for instance. And obviously there's a financial cost to that. I'm just wondering, for those, have you had those conversations with the powers that be on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, I'm in the building, so the building is ours. We don't, there's slightly, we've looked to extend our kind of the build and tech time. So So although there's a financial implication that we can't program, potentially we might lose some programming days. Generally, it's an earlier in the week, so we don't lose, that much. I think certain things that we've done, that we've put in place, and actually I found the hardest people to convince that this is a good idea is stage management, if I'm absolutely honest. But we've saved money on overtime. So there was the opposite side of that is we'll do whole tech periods and we won't go into overtime with the actors or stage management. So there's a positive there. Something that I have started at Truck is, so we get through our build period, but we also, so we work it so that we finish our build period either 1 or 2 days, working days prior to tech. And then that time is then, if it's like a Christmas show, something bigger, then they have 2 days. If it's only something smaller, then it's a single day. And that day is then given over to the stage management and to the cast, and their last day of rehearsals before tech is on set. So most of the kind of the redirecting, most of the, oh crap, there's a door here kind of moment, they get over that before we get into the tech rehearsal, which then speeds up the tech rehearsal to then, so the tech rehearsal really is about, right, let's get this lighting cue in the right position before we move on, not a, remember that's a push door, not a pull. Do you know what I mean? We have definitely some benefits. There is, I'm sure if I didn't put my foot down and say, no, we want this much for our tech time so that we can do this, the programmer would be much happier to program stuff in that isn't, dead space for them in essence. But on the plus side, we don't go into overtime, which can become horrifically expensive.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you, Garan. Ali, is there anything that you wanted to?
Well, only, I mean, it's fantastic that these conversations are happening, but we should remember that there's probably quite a few of us on this little meeting that have been saying this for 30, 40 years. So we shouldn't underestimate what we need to do. And therefore, I think the charter mark is a fantastic idea, because it says this is what we're aiming for. And even if you can only do 1 or 2 of these things, then that's a fantastic start. Because I think, as I say, there's a lot of us that have probably been saying this for, last week reading Fee's information that she gleaned, I'm thinking, I was saying this 30 years ago. Everything that was said, there was nothing new. So there is nothing new, but how do we make it new? How do we make it the new? And it's a drip at a time. I think, as Mark said, it's if we can achieve 2 out of the 10 or whatever it is, then that's fun. That's a great start, and it will just feed in. And it is the younger ones, because we've got to hand over the good baton rather than the bad baton that says, we can count. Oh yes, well they did that for
not
hours and hours and hours.
Not wishing to sound like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. We do it together. That's how we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I open the floor to John, who's had his hand up there?
Yeah, so I just want to echo what's been said, but particularly what Ali was just saying about, you've talked about it going on for a number of years that you've been discussing this problem. Well, I graduated from Central in 2007 now, and we were taught, the PEC2 SALT agreement, and all of our productions had to fit within that 11-hour breaks and those kind of rules. But actually, as soon as I got to work, it was very clear that it was really hard to try and maintain that. And you get into the scenario, particularly as a freelancer, of not being able to restrict the hours and having directors and having producers saying, well, we've got the venue booked for 10 days, particularly if you're working, in site-specific work. We need to maximise the time in those venues. But I think what Ali was just saying is you've talked about it for maybe 30 years or more. And I've already seen that it's 14 years since I left college, and actually it hasn't changed. So for the younger people who are here, it is that thing that, if we don't change it now, it will never change. And I think that's why the kite mark has to be there. And that has to start from, it needs producers to accept it, it needs venues to accept it, but it needs freelancers to also be protected by it, and colleges, to accept it. And rather than to try and work to, as we were taught, on different agreements and look at all the agreements that are in place, but then won't actually affect the work you're doing, if colleges can subscribe to a charter and people can get used to the people coming out who have been taught to that charter and working to that, that's got to help us.
Thank you so much, John. May I invite Graham or Phil or Alicia or Natasha into the conversation?
I'll say hello, but I'm conscious that I've missed a fair chunk because I was tied up elsewhere. But from the little I have heard, I presume we're looking at trying to start back better and whatnot. The only thing I was going to chip in is we tried at the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow when I first started as a production manager. We had more dead time in the schedule. We decided to try and eke out fit-ups and techs over longer periods of time, and generally working two session techs as opposed to 3 session techs, and things like that. And it dwindled pretty fast because nobody wanted to be teching for that long. Because there was a feeling amongst the team that you end up with tech fatigue when you're on day 6 of the tech, in a way that you don't when it's a concentrated effort for a shorter number of days. I mean, that was just our experience, and that we ended up drifting back towards that being more condensed, and we've kind of been that way ever since. Having said that, the not breaking the 11-hour overnight break and taking tea breaks, dinner breaks, and things like that is kind of, they're pretty sacrosanct where we are, and they don't tend to happen. So. And we work an average hours agreement, which is a bespoke kind of back to in-house agreement, where people know they're getting the time back because it's average hours rather than overtime. So you tend to know if you've had to do a really, really busy kind of 50 or 60 hour week or something like that, that you know that time's coming back to you. So the work-life balance kind of averages out over the year. So it's just my tuppence, but I'm highly conscious that I've missed what sounds like a really interesting debate, and I'll catch it up on Facebook.
Thank you very much, Graham. Anything, Phil or Natasha or Alicia or Andreas or Louise, that you wanted to throw in?
I think from my experience, it's also talking to the designers with regards to what they can actually fit into the tech sessions, and also remembering that everyone is trying to do their best, and that's why they want more time. It's not because they want the hours, it's because they're really trying to create a good product. So it's about trying to manage those expectations and realistic parameters, but it would be very interesting to see what the designers and the programmers and the technical managers also thought about how they could achieve it.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Phil?
I'm a production manager from the United States for a university, and I signed up for your email newsletter a couple of years ago, which I was watching this meeting on the Facebook, but I dipped over to see if there is a document that's been shared with the proposals for this Restart Better, because I think it'd be great to share this around the United States as well.
Let me bring in Terry there, because I know that he wants to talk about a couple of bits and pieces, and that may answer some of your questions, Phil. Terry?
Yeah, I mean, in answer to Phil, absolutely, we should share this with you guys over there. And I think that if you look through the chat, there is a link to some aspects of the document, so please do that. Failing that, get in touch direct, Phil, and I'll send you a copy of what's been arrived at. All right. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things and to sort of wave a flag to say I'm having a brilliant afternoon. And the reason for that is so many people are picking up on this notion of a charter mark, and that's wonderful. And I raised my hat to actually Shaylee in the corner down there, who hit me with this idea earlier today. It's brilliant if we can get this accepted, because it can be universal across the whole of the trade. Beyond that, though, we are going to need to be looking at different approaches for different sectors, obviously, but as long as we've got some chunks in there that people can really, you know, sort of insurer signed up to, we'll be there. And I like the idea that Mark said about, you know, well, if there hasn't got a charter, Mark, don't work for them. So that somebody will. But if you want to stay sane, and if you want to, you know, anyway, hopefully, as this goes on, and it's not going to happen in 5 minutes, but we need to be moving on it soon. Hopefully, as it goes on, this notion of a behave better charter, work better charter is going to get us a long way. So, Molly, you know, with Theatre 503 in Battersea, there will be obviously a different approach for you, you know, for your company. Dan, who works off the West End, there's going to be a different detail approach, but the overall charter is essential, and I can't push it hard enough, and I've probably said enough for the afternoon.
Thank you very much, Terry. Dan Goslin has just put in the chat, I think the pressure is also on with regards to mental health and inclusion now, and the visibility of those issues is so important that it should be more important to producers. We had started to try and deliver a roadmap for change with some of our clients, Eastage, for example, and there was positivity to the ideas, but it remains to be seen if it follows through. We also considered additional steps like MHFA for PMs and treating it in the same way we treat normal FA with reporting. I think it's an excellent point, and I think, you know, not being able to seize the moment now when the entire world is thinking about how mental health affects everybody, that we've all gone through this pandemic together. I think it's vital. Can I bring Alicia in now, please? Thank you. Welcome, Alicia.
Hi, thank you. Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm a production manager at Mountview Academy. I just wanted to add quite briefly, actually, that we've managed to continue, first of all, in making productions, obviously, because we're a university. So we were working all of last term. We're due to start back again from the 8th of March. And we've actually managed to stick to those 2 session days during tech, which was, I think, originally introduced based on the kind of curfew system that was in place during COVID. So we've kind of used COVID almost as an excuse to be able to continue sticking with those 2 sessions, because we've also realized that actually, you know, adding an extra couple of hours doesn't really gain us anything. It just, we'd still have to, you know, create another break for people. So we're going to continue to stick to those 2 sessions. So it does work and it is possible. And actually, I think maybe people are going to be used to it, you know, which would be great if when we get back, people aren't kind of complaining and wanting to extend those hours. So it is possible. That's all I wanted to say, basically.
Thank you so much, Alicia. That's really fantastic to hear. Just adding onto that, we've here at the Sherman, where I am in Cardiff, we are a stone's throw away from Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. And the only reason we've been able to be open throughout this period is that we've been hired by Royal Welsh to be an extension of their teaching facilities here. And we indeed also had shows in our main house and our studio theatre just for Royal Welsh last year. And we just had one last week. I would say that 3 out of the 4 shows have managed to do 2 session days, and one of the demands of one of the directors, who's a very lovely director, but crazy demands, meant that show didn't achieve anywhere close to what the others were. But I agree, it can be done. Alicia, thank you so much. Ollie Brown, may I pass to you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about, I think, in terms of like the actual tech sessions, again, I fully think 2 session days is where it has to be. I think when we come to like build time and when we come to kind of plot, come to the, you know, all the things that we do around those sessions, we have to encourage everybody, including us, to be less precious about our positions. And actually, why can't we have more than one programmer? Why can't we have more than one, you know, sound engineer? Why can't we have more than one of each? You know, why can't we job share some of this? So actually we can, you know, the build time could become shorter because actually we could work extending hours, but in job shares. They don't have to be, it doesn't have to be, I'm the programmer for this show, I'm the production manager for this show. We can, I think we should be encouraging encouraging that. And on the other side of that, it's more freelancers being employed, it's more people getting jobs, it's more employment out there. Again, there is a financial thing to that, but I think as an industry, we're quite scared of job sharing. And I know that I'm quite involved in PIPA, and like, you know, the new Vic, they really did lots of great things about that with having job share ASMs and job share stage management. So that shows that it can work, but I think we need to be less scared of job sharing.
Completely agree. I think that's a really fantastic point. Thank you so much, Ollie. May I bring Mike in?
Yeah, just off the back of what Ollie was saying, really. Before this, I worked at the National Theatre as a deputy production manager, and actually by having deputies there, it meant that the production managers didn't do the really long days all the time. One of us could do the early shift, the other could do the late shift, and you could split it up like that. But actually, you don't see that many venues having deputy production managers on board. The National could do it as kind of, they had 3 full-time production managers, 3 deputy production managers on fixed-term contracts. Unfortunately, they let all of the deputies go because we're on fixed-term contracts. But hopefully, once the shows start coming back through, they'll continue with working in that way.
Thank you very much, Mike. I could be super facetious and say they also have the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow at the National, but I won't say that out loud. Oh no, it's being recorded. Terry, you've got your hand up.
Yes, actually, that was from earlier. I have my hand up electronically. I will try to remove it. There we go.
Thank you ever so much. Alicia, you also have your hand up. Was that from before as well?
Sorry, yes, it was. I'll take it off.
Thank you very much. Rachel, you're just waving your hand around. You're all just trying to test me here. Thank you ever so much. Well, from my point of view, that conversation has been fantastic. Thank you so much for everyone who's commented. David, you have something?
Yeah, just picking up on something Rachel mentioned. If anybody does have any ideas about this, please do send them through, and then we can just draw them. You know, the more input there is on this. I mean, obviously, people have been taking notes on what's been going on here. Any ideas you have, it can only be a benefit to the industry, and it would be, because more and more people are engaging with this. So please do. That was it. That's all I had to say, and I love you all.
Thank you, David. Anything from those who haven't joined in the conversation? Louise, is there anything you wanted to add? Or Ruth, anything you wanted to add? Andreas, David Ripley?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think it's all absolutely right. I think it's just about going and doing it, really. Many years ago now, I was stage managing a project with a very new director and a young cast, and Saturday, but we were due to start teching on the Monday and the Saturday beforehand. She decided that she wanted to call everybody in for a rehearsal, and I wasn't getting paid enough for it anyway, so I just turned around and said no. And all of the cast said yes, and she said yes, and I said, but you're going to find you're exhausted by the time you get to the tech. It's not worth it, don't do it. But they went and did it, and I spoke to them on the Monday when we came in for the tech, and they all said, yeah, no, we're exhausted, you were right. So yeah, maybe it's partly about, just pointing that out to people, reminding them what they already know.
That's a really good point. Thank you so much, Louise. Ruth, anything you wanted to add? No, you're happy? David Ripley, anything you wanted to bring to the table?
No, I think it is that, and I think those of us that are in drama schools have got responsibility to take this to the table before the beginning of the next academic year, to start saying this is what we need to start considering, rather than, as you say, that sort of dying in a ditch at all times to get the show on. And yeah, it's something I'll certainly take back. And it's interesting that Alicia at Mountview are doing this. I mean, I think there'll be a lot of pushback, but yeah, it's something that needs to be discussed and talked about. And certainly with the sort of education group that we've got amongst the drama schools, that's a good place to really talk about that amongst all the other colleges. And I think, as other people have said, you know, with the charter mark, the trouble is there's always someone going to do the job that you won't. And that's always the problem. And so it's a question of, again, going into the drama schools and through the PMF to actually make people aware of this. And you don't have to be completely trashed at the end of a show and never want to go back in the theatre again. That's not what you're supposed to feel like when the curtain goes up on the first night, which I think for a lot of us has been the case in the past. So I think it's very difficult. And I can see, Lucy, for instance, you know, again, it's really difficult. We need to tell the new production managers this, because obviously they're new people. They haven't got the track record. They don't know their value yet, as it were, to be able to say, no, actually, that is not worth doing for that small sum of cash, even though they've got debts and everything. And as Ollie was saying, that's really difficult, I think, for people. That is so hard. So that's why we need to be there to support people like that.
Thank you very much, David. We've got various things that are going into the chat function. There's various messages and links and info that's being shared. So do dip into the chat and have a look at that. Any of those documents we will of course share on the PMF website as well, and we'll put links and things into our newsletters. I wonder if I can be so bold as to go to the elder statesman in the room, who is the ever gorgeous and wonderful Peter Dean, who wrote the book on this. If there's anything you would like to kind of finish off this this section of the meeting with, Peter.
I've found the discussion really interesting from a kind of personal point of view, because yeah, you know, back in the day when I was still working, I was doing all those silly hours and all the things that everybody's talked about. And even then, when I was at Guildhall, there were the pressures of things that everybody's been talking about, particularly, I think, getting creative teams to sign up to what we were trying to do. And I made myself very unpopular with a number of directors and designers because they were told that we were not doing it for them, for their CVs. We were doing it for the students who were actually paying everybody. And that didn't go down well in some cases. And just finally, from a personal point of view, thinking about Petrus, you know, I was lucky enough to be in a position to retire just after I was 50. Otherwise, I'm sure I would have been dead in the ditch. There's no doubt about that. And not everybody is in the lucky position to you know, to be able to do that. So very interesting discussion, I think, and I'm going to look forward to writing it up now for the minutes.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think that I, for one, have not been a part of this many production managers talking about this most important subject and such a diverse range of ages and backgrounds and kind of thank you so much. And I'm sorry if I strong-armed anyone into talking.